The tiny, sunburned bodies of twin newborns lay abandoned beneath a saguaro cactus, their desperate cries reaching the one man forbidden by sacred law to save them. Chief Standing Bear's decision that day would violate his tribe's most ancient traditions and ignite a mother's relentless 4-year hunt through the merciless Sonoran Desert. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. Under the merciless Sonoran Desert sky, where the sun punished the earth with its golden fury, 2 small bundles trembled in the shadows of a majestic saguaro cactus. Their cries, almost inaudible, mingled with the howling wind that swept across the arid landscape that morning in 1882. No one was supposed to hear them. No one was supposed to find them. That was the purpose of those who, in the dead of night, had left the newborn twins for the desert to decide their fate. Chief Standing Bear, his 45 years marked by the scars of wars and wisdom, followed a trail of footprints that led into sacred territory. His eyes, black as obsidian, narrowed as he noticed the disturbance in the sandy soil. Something was wrong. Something violated the ancestral lands where the souls of his forefathers rested. The sound almost disappeared among the whisper of the sands, but his ears, trained by decades of hunting, caught the fragile lament. A child's cry. No, 2 cries, distinct as raindrops, rare and precious in that world of stone and thorns. In Silver Creek, the small frontier town less than a day's walk away, Martha Sinclair stared at the empty wall of her cabin. Her eyes, swollen from crying, produced no more tears. Her womb, still marked by recent pregnancy, ached with an absence that words could not express. Seated in the rocking chair that her late husband had built for when the babies arrived, she moved back and forth in a monotonous rhythm, like a broken pendulum. "You're lucky, Martha," Pastor Collins had said the previous night, his grave voice carrying false compassion. "God took the creatures before the curse could spread. Twins bring drought and death. That's what the old stories say." And she, too weak to fight, sedated with laudanum by Dr. Wilson, had merely watched as they took her children. To a better place, they promised, to rest in peace. Standing Bear approached cautiously. His people's law was clear. The sacred lands should not be touched by foreign hands, and the affairs of white men were not the business of the Apache. Interference would bring dishonor, possibly exile, but something stronger than centuries-old traditions pulled him toward those sounds. Under the dappled shadow of the saguaro, 2 infants, wrapped in blankets too thin for the cold desert night, moved weakly. Their skin, already reddened by the rising sun, burned. Their mouths, parched, could barely make sounds. A few more hours and the silence would be permanent. "Who did this?" murmured Standing Bear in his native tongue, crouching to examine the children. Identical twins, with tufts of dark hair and eyes closed against the merciless light. What evil spirit inhabits the heart of those who abandon their own seed? The answer came on the wind. Superstition. He knew well the beliefs of white men about double births. In some tribes, even among his own people, twins were viewed with suspicion as an omen of imbalance in the natural order. Standing Bear looked toward the horizon. Returning to his camp with children of the white men would break taboos as ancient as the mountains themselves. His position as chief would be questioned. He might be forced to leave his people, to wander alone through hostile lands, but leaving the children there was sentencing 2 innocent lives to the cruelest death. One of the babies opened his eyes at that moment, deep, dark, trusting, and looked at the Apache warrior's face without fear, as if recognizing in him a protector sent by the spirits. Standing Bear felt something break inside him, like spring ice cracking after a long winter. He removed his fur cloak, carefully wrapped the 2 small bodies, and lifting them against his chest, made his decision. "Come," he said softly. "Today the Great Spirit placed your lives in my hands, and I will not reject them." And so, with the sun climbing in the unforgiving sky, Chief Standing Bear walked away from the sacred lands, carrying a burden that would forever change his destiny and that of his tribe. Against his chest, the hearts of the twins beat weakly but persistently, like distant drums, announcing a new story about to begin. The sun climbed higher as Standing Bear made his way through the desert, his moccasins leaving deep tracks in the sand. The weight of the twins in his arms was slight, but the burden of his decision pressed heavy on his shoulders. With each step away from the sacred grounds, he could feel the invisible threads that connected him to his ancestors stretching thin, threatening to snap. By midday, the heat had become unbearable. Standing Bear stopped in the shade of a rock formation, carefully placing the bundles on a bed of soft deer skin he carried. The infants' lips were cracked, their breathing shallow. They needed water, and soon. "Hold on, little warriors," he whispered, untying a water pouch from his belt. With practiced gentleness, he moistened a strip of cloth and pressed it against the first child's lips, watching as the baby instinctively sucked at the moisture. He repeated the process with the second twin. The sacred spring was still hours away, and Standing Bear knew the children might not survive the journey without sustenance. He scanned the desert around him, eyes settling on a barrel cactus. With his hunting knife, he skillfully cut into its flesh, extracting precious liquid. He mixed the bitter cactus water with his drinking supply to make it palatable, and continued the patient work of feeding the infants. Meanwhile, in Silver Creek, whispers traveled from porch to porch, door to door. Martha Sinclair had been confined to her bed, Dr. Wilson insisting that her female hysteria required complete rest. But her neighbor, Abigail Reynolds, had seen what happened when they took the babies. "It ain't right," Abigail muttered to her husband as they sat on their front porch, voices low. "Those weren't monsters, they were children. Her children." James Reynolds puffed on his pipe, eyes darting nervously toward the church where Pastor Collins stood in conversation with the town's most prominent citizens. "You know the stories, Abby. Twins born after a father dies? It's a sign of evil. The drought's been going on 3 years now. People are scared." "Scared don't make it right," she replied, her weathered hands gripping her knitting needles tighter. "Where'd they take them?" James looked away. "Don't ask questions you don't want answers to." The sun had begun its descent when Standing Bear finally spotted the smoke from his village rising above the mesquite trees. The smell of cooking fires and horses carried on the wind, familiar and comforting. But today these sensations brought anxiety rather than peace. He paused at the edge of the camp, gathering his courage. White Feather, his eldest daughter, was the first to spot him. At 17, she had her mother's beauty and his stubbornness. She ran toward him, smiling, until she saw what he carried. "Father!" Her dark eyes widened with confusion, then understanding, then fear. "What have you done?" Before he could answer, others emerged from their dwellings. Running Horse, the medicine man whose word carried weight equal to Standing Bear's own. Swift Fox, the young warrior whose ambition often clouded his judgment. And Dark Water, Standing Bear's mother, her ancient face a map of the tribe's history. "I found them abandoned in the sacred burial grounds," Standing Bear said, his voice steady despite the trembling in his chest, "left to die under the sun." Running Horse stepped forward, his ceremonial staff thumping against the earth. "You brought white man's children into our camp?" His voice was not angry, but heavy with concern. "You know our laws. The sacred grounds are not to be disturbed. Their fate was decided by their own people." "They are babies," Standing Bear replied. "Their people decided wrong." Swift Fox spat on the ground. "Their people bring disease, death. Their soldiers kill our brothers and sisters, and you bring their seed into our home." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathering crowd. Standing Bear remained silent, holding the twins close to his chest. One of them began to whimper, the sound small but clear in the tense silence. It was Dark Water who moved next, her steps slow but determined. The crowd parted for her, respect for her 90 years etched in their movements. She approached her son, eyes like black stones in her wrinkled face. "Let me see them," she commanded. Standing Bear knelt, carefully unwrapping the fur to reveal the twins. Their skin was still red from sun exposure, but their eyes, now both open, moved with surprising alertness. Dark Water studied them without touching, her breath a gentle whisper across their faces. Then, to everyone's surprise, she straightened and turned to face the tribe. "The law is clear," she said, "but so is the heart of a chief who chooses mercy over tradition. That is why he leads." Dark Water's words hung in the air like smoke, unexpected and powerful. The tribe stood silent, caught between tradition and the authority of their eldest member. Running Horse gripped his staff tighter, his knuckles whitening with tension. "You would have us break our sacred laws for the sons of our enemies?" Swift Fox's voice cut through the silence, sharp as an arrowhead. "The white man burns our lands, poisons our water, kills our brothers, and now we nurture their children?" Standing Bear remained kneeling, the twins cradled against him. One had fallen asleep, exhausted from the journey, but the other stared up with dark eyes that seemed too knowing for a newborn. "I did not bring them here to debate," Standing Bear finally said, rising slowly to his feet. "I brought them here because they will die without help. Whatever decision is made about their future, today they need water, milk, and shelter." White Feather stepped forward, her slender frame casting a long shadow in the fading light. "I will help," she said, meeting her father's gaze with determination that mirrored his own. "The spirits sent you to find them. That alone means something." Dark Water nodded, her ancient face creasing into what might have been a smile. "My daughter's daughter speaks wisdom. The council can debate tomorrow. Tonight these little ones need care." Swift Fox turned away in disgust, but not before spitting words like venom. "Tomorrow you may find yourself no longer chief." The crowd dispersed slowly, murmurs of controversy trailing behind them like dust devils across the desert floor. Standing Bear carried the twins toward his dwelling, a circular wickiup made of brush and mud that stood at the camp's center. White Feather walked beside him, already planning aloud. "Mourning Dove lost her baby last moon," she said quietly. "Her milk still flows. She can feed them until we find another way." Standing Bear nodded, grateful for his daughter's practical mind. "Go to her, ask, don't demand. This must be her choice." As White Feather hurried away, Standing Bear entered his home and carefully placed the twins on a soft bed of rabbit furs. In the dim light, he finally examined them properly. They were smaller than Apache newborns, their skin paler beneath the sunburn. Their features, though still unfixed as all newborns are, showed traces of what would one day be handsome faces. "You carry a storm with you," he told them softly, "but perhaps you also bring rain to end our drought." Across the miles of desert and scrubland, Martha Sinclair sat up suddenly in her bed, a strange sensation pulling at her chest. Her breasts ached, swollen with milk for babies she believed were dead. Dr. Wilson had given her medicine to dry up the milk, but her body stubbornly refused to forget its purpose. "They're alive," she whispered to the empty room. "I can feel it." The door opened, and Abigail Reynolds entered with a bowl of broth. "You need to eat, Martha. You haven't touched food since it happened." Martha turned to her friend, eyes clear for the first time in days. "They didn't die, did they? They took my boys somewhere." Abigail nearly dropped the bowl. She set it down carefully on the bedside table before answering. "Martha, you're not well. The fever's making you imagine—" "Tell me the truth." Martha's voice was low but steady. "As my friend, as a mother yourself." Abigail sat heavily on the edge of the bed, her hands twisting in her apron. "There's talk," she admitted reluctantly. "Some of the men rode out before dawn yesterday. They came back without anything to bury." Martha's fingers clutched at the thin blanket covering her legs. "They left them out there, in the desert." It wasn't a question, but Abigail nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "Pastor Collins said it was merciful, that they wouldn't suffer long." "Merciful," Martha repeated, the word tasting like poison on her tongue. "Get out! Martha, get out!" The scream tore from her throat, raw and primal. When Abigail fled, Martha rose from her bed on shaking legs. Her body protested after days of confinement, but determination drove her forward. She would need water, food, her husband's old hunting rifle. She would follow the men's tracks herself if necessary. Back at the Apache camp, night had fully claimed the sky when Morning Dove arrived at Standing Bear's dwelling. She was a young woman, no more than 20 winters, with grief still etched in the shadows beneath her eyes. She carried herself proudly, however, entering without hesitation when White Feather beckoned her inside. Her eyes fell immediately on the twins, now clean and wrapped in soft deerskin. Without a word, she knelt beside them and gathered one into her arms. The baby rooted instinctively, finding her breast with a hunger that brought tears to her eyes. "The spirits take," she said softly as the infant suckled, "and the spirits give." Standing Bear watched from the entrance, relief washing over him. "You honor us with your generosity." Morning Dove looked up, her gaze direct. "This is not for you, Chief, nor for your honor. This is between me and the Great Spirit who took my son and sent me these instead." White Feather took the second twin, waiting for Morning Dove to finish feeding the first. Outside, the normal evening sounds of the camp seemed muted, as if the entire tribe held its breath, waiting for tomorrow's council meeting. "They need names," White Feather said suddenly. "We cannot simply call them the twins forever." Standing Bear moved to the fire, adding a small log. Sparks rose like fireflies into the darkness of his home. "Names will come," he said, "when we know who they are to become." Dawn broke over the Apache camp with the solemn anticipation that precedes momentous decisions. Standing Bear had not slept. He sat outside his dwelling, watching the eastern sky transform from black to indigo to fiery orange, the colors of judgment approaching. Inside, Morning Dove dozed with the twins nestled against her. She had stayed through the night, feeding them in turns, singing soft melodies that seemed to calm their restless movements. White Feather had prepared a mixture of crushed mesquite beans and water to supplement the feedings, coaxing the sweet liquid into their tiny mouths with a cloth. The camp stirred to life around him. Women rekindled cooking fires, children emerged sleepy-eyed from family dwellings, and warriors gathered in small groups. Voices hushed but tense. Every movement, every glance in Standing Bear's direction carried the weight of unspoken questions. Running Horse approached first, his ceremonial garb adorned with eagle feathers and elk teeth that clicked softly with each step. Behind him walked 5 elders, men and women whose combined wisdom guided the tribe through drought, war, and displacement. The council gathers at the speaking circle when the sun touches the tall saguaro, Running Horse announced, his voice neutral, but his eyes troubled. "You will bring the white children." Standing Bear nodded once. "I will speak for them." "And who will speak for the law?" countered Swift Fox, approaching with 4 young warriors at his back. Their faces were painted with red ochre, the color of war. "Who will speak for our ancestors whose sacred ground you violated?" "I will speak for all sides," said Darkwater, appearing so suddenly that even Swift Fox took a step back in surprise. Despite her age, she moved like shadow through the camp, her presence commanding immediate respect. The law exists to protect the people, not to blind them to compassion. Swift Fox's jaw tightened, but he dared not challenge the tribe's eldest member directly. He retreated with a curt nod, though the tension in his shoulders spoke of unresolved anger. When they had gone, Darkwater turned to her son. "Bring the little ones to my dwelling before the council. There is something I must do." Miles away, Martha Sinclair moved through the pre-dawn darkness with desperate determination. She had dressed in her husband's clothes, pants, shirt, boots too large for her feet, but stuffed with rags to fit. His wide-brimmed hat covered her hair, cut short with kitchen scissors in hasty preparation. A canteen hung at her hip, a small pack of provisions on her back, and her husband's rifle in her hands. She had left a note for Abigail, though she doubted anyone would come looking for her until well after sunrise. Dr. Wilson had promised to return in the afternoon with more laudanum, which gave her hours to put distance between herself and Silver Creek. Martha had never tracked anything in her life, but grief and maternal instinct drove her forward with surprising clarity. The men would have taken the southern trail toward the old burial grounds, the place whispered about in town as cursed, haunted by Indian spirits. It was far enough that no one would stumble upon what they had done. "I'm coming," she whispered, the words like a prayer on the desert wind. "Hold on, my babies, Mother's coming." Back at the Apache camp, Standing Bear carried the twins to Darkwater's dwelling, the oldest and most elaborate in the village. Smoke rose from the central fire pit, scented with juniper and sage, cleansing herbs used in sacred ceremonies. Darkwater sat beside the fire, grinding something in a stone mortar. She did not look up as Standing Bear entered with White Feather and Mourning Dove behind him. "Place them on the blanket," she instructed, continuing her rhythmic grinding. "Remove their coverings." Standing Bear hesitated only briefly before unwrapping the twins and laying them naked on a soft buffalo hide. They squirmed in the morning air, their movements more vigorous than the day before. A good sign. Darkwater finally set aside her mortar and regarded the infants with ancient eyes. "They were born together, sharing one womb, one beginning," she said. "Such children are special to our people, contrary to what Swift Fox would have everyone believe." She dipped her fingers into the mortar, coating them with a mixture of red ochre, charcoal, and bear fat. With deliberate movements, she drew a small symbol on each child's chest, directly over their hearts, a spiral that turned inward on the first twin, outward on the second. "This one," she said, touching the first twin, "looks outward, but his spirit turns inward. He will be the thinker, the one who watches and waits." She touched the second twin. "And this one looks inward, but his spirit reaches outward. He will be the doer, the one who acts and protects." Standing Bear watched in silence, aware that his mother was performing a naming ceremony, a sacred rite typically done days after an Apache birth. "The first shall be called Silent River," Darkwater continued. "For like water, his thoughts run deep and quiet, but with great power." She placed her wrinkled hand on the second twin's forehead. "And this one shall be Thunder Sky, for his voice will one day be heard across the mountains." White Feather gasped softly. By naming the twins in the Apache tradition, Darkwater had claimed them for the tribe. No council could now declare them outsiders without challenging the authority of the tribe's most revered elder. "Grandmother," she said, "you have given them protection." Darkwater looked up, her eyes sharp as flint. "I have given them what the spirits showed me. Whether that brings protection or conflict remains to be seen." As the sun climbed higher, Standing Bear wrapped the twins again, the red symbols still visible above the edge of their blankets. "It is time," he said, his voice steady despite the drumming of his heart. The council circle had filled with nearly every member of the tribe. Men, women, and children gathered in concentric rings around the central fire, where 7 stones marked the seats of the council elders. Running Horse stood at the eastern point, his staff planted firmly in the desert soil. Standing Bear entered the circle with Silent River and Thunder Sky in his arms, Dark Water, White Feather, and Morning Dove following close behind. The crowd's murmuring ceased, replaced by a tension so thick it seemed to vibrate in the hot morning air. "We gather to decide the fate of these children," Running Horse began, his voice carrying across the assembly, "and with them, the fate of our chief, Standing Bear, who has broken sacred law to bring them here." The council circle pulsed with tension as Standing Bear stood at its center, the twins cradled in his arms. The 7 elders sat on their stone seats, faces impassive as desert rock, while the tribe formed a living wall around them. "I have broken no law that matters," Standing Bear began, his voice steady and clear. "The sacred ground was already violated by those who left these children to die. I merely answered the cry that the spirits allowed me to hear." Swift Fox stepped forward from the crowd, his chest painted with symbols of the warrior society. "Our laws are not for you to interpret, Chief," he said, the title carrying a hint of mockery. "The burial grounds are forbidden. The affairs of white men are not our concern. 2 laws broken in one act." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Running Horse raised his staff for silence. "The law exists to protect our people," Standing Bear countered. "Would you have me walk past dying children? What warrior leaves the defenseless to perish?" "They are not our children," Swift Fox replied. "They are the offspring of those who would see us all dead. Every white child grows to become a soldier, a settler who steals our land." Standing Bear gazed down at the twins, who had begun to stir at the sound of raised voices. "Look at them," he challenged, turning slowly to show the infants to the entire circle. "Do you see soldiers? Do you see thieves? I see only children, as innocent as any born to our people." Dark Water stepped forward then, her ancient voice carrying surprising strength. "My son speaks truth, but so does Swift Fox." She moved to the center of the circle, standing beside Standing Bear. "Our ways are clear about the sacred grounds. They are clear about involving ourselves in the white man's troubles." Swift Fox nodded in satisfaction, but Dark Water continued before he could speak. "Yet our ways also teach us to honor the signs sent by the spirits. Standing Bear did not seek these children. They were placed in his path." She gestured to the red symbols painted on the twins' chests. "I have named them in our tradition. Silent River and Thunder Sky are now of our blood." Gasps and exclamations erupted from the crowd. Running Horse slammed his staff into the earth 3 times, demanding order. "You overstep, Dark Water," he said, though his tone remained respectful. "Naming does not make them Apache." "Then what does?" challenged White Feather, joining her father and grandmother in the circle. "Is it the blood, the skin, or is it the heart that beats within? My father risked his position, his honor, to save lives. What could be more Apache than that?" Meanwhile, miles across the desert, Martha Sinclair stumbled over loose rock, her husband's boots rubbing painful blisters on her heels. The morning sun had risen fully now, its heat pressing down like a physical weight. She had followed the southern trail as far as she could, but the tracks had disappeared where the ground turned to hard, rocky terrain. She stopped, breathing heavily, and unscrewed her canteen. The water was already warm, but she took only a small sip, aware that she needed to conserve every drop. Looking around at the vast, empty landscape, doubt crept in for the first time. "What am I doing?" she whispered to herself, suddenly overwhelmed by the impossibility of her task. The desert stretched endlessly in all directions, indifferent to her pain, her loss, her desperate maternal need. A movement caught her eye, a lizard darting between rocks, its scales flashing in the sunlight. It paused, seeming to look directly at her, then scurried toward a cluster of boulders to the southeast. Martha watched it go, reminded suddenly of something her husband used to say. "The desert speaks to those who know how to listen." She didn't know how to listen, but she knew how to follow. With renewed determination, she adjusted her pack and headed southeast. If nothing else, the boulders would provide shade for a rest. As she walked, Martha spoke to her children as if they could hear her. "I'm coming, my loves. I don't know where you are, but I won't stop looking. Not ever." Back at the council, the debate had grown heated. Tribe members called out from the circle, some supporting Standing Bear, others demanding adherence to tradition. The twins began to cry, their wails rising above the arguments, silencing the assembly momentarily. Mourning Dove stepped forward, taking Thunder Sky from Standing Bear's arms. She began to sing a lullaby, her voice sweet and clear in the sudden quiet. The baby's cries softened, then stopped altogether. Silent River, still in Standing Bear's arms, also grew calm, as if drawing comfort from his brother's peace. "Look at how they respond to our songs," Mourning Dove said when she finished. "They may not have Apache blood, but their spirits recognize our ways." Running Horse stood, signaling a shift in the proceedings. "I have heard enough debate. It is time for the council to speak." He turned to the elder on his right, a woman named Spotted Fawn, whose knowledge of tribal law was unmatched. "The law is clear," she said slowly, "but so is the heart of our chief. I see no evil in his actions, only courage." The next elder, Grey Wolf, disagreed. "The sacred ground is violated, the natural order disturbed. The white man's troubles have been brought to our door. I cannot support this." One by one the elders spoke, until they reached the final member, an ancient man known as Stone Eyes for his unflinching gaze. He had sat silently throughout the proceedings, watching everything with unnerving intensity. "I have lived through 9 chiefs," he began, his voice like gravel. "I have seen laws upheld and laws broken. I have seen wisdom in tradition and wisdom in change." He paused, looking directly at Standing Bear. "But never have I seen a chief willing to sacrifice his position for children, not his own." The assembly held its breath as Stone Eyes rose shakily to his feet. The spirits guided Standing Bear to those children. The spirits guided Dark Water to name them. Who are we to question such signs? He turned to face Swift Fox. "Your courage in battle is known to all, young warrior. But today, Standing Bear shows a different kind of courage, one that may serve our people better in these changing times." Swift Fox's face darkened, but he remained silent as Stone Eyes continued. "Let the children stay. Let them be raised as Apache. Let them learn our ways, our strength, our honor." He looked again at Standing Bear, "And let their presence remind us all that compassion is not weakness." 4 of the 7 elders nodded in agreement. Running Horse struck his staff against the earth once more. "The council has spoken. Silent River and Thunder Sky will remain with us." He turned to Standing Bear. "You will continue as chief, but you alone bear responsibility for these children. If they bring harm to our people, the weight falls on your shoulders." Standing Bear nodded solemnly. "I accept this burden freely." As the council dispersed, Swift Fox approached Standing Bear, his young face tight with controlled anger. "You may have won today, Chief, but these white children will bring trouble. Mark my words." Whitefeather stepped between them, her eyes flashing. "They have names now, Swift Fox. Use them, or do you challenge Dark Water's authority as well?" Swift Fox retreated, but not before giving Standing Bear a look that promised this matter was far from settled. That night, as the twins slept peacefully in his dwelling, Standing Bear sat by the fire, wondering if he had done right by his people. The responsibility felt enormous, not just for 2 lives, but for the harmony of his tribe. Outside, beyond the camp's boundaries, a lone wolf howled at the rising moon. Standing Bear listened to its cry, lonely, determined, unwavering, like the sound of a mother searching for her lost cubs. 3 summers passed, each season etching its mark on the land and its people. The drought that had gripped the region finally broke during the twins' first winter with the tribe, bringing life-giving rain that many attributed to their presence. The twin spirits brought water, the older women would say, glancing at Standing Bear's dwelling, where the boys now toddled about on sturdy legs. Silent River and Thunder Sky had grown into strong children with sun-darkened skin and long black hair that White Feather braided in the Apache style. Though identical in appearance, their personalities had diverged exactly as Darkwater predicted. Silent River observed the world with watchful eyes, speaking little but missing nothing. Thunder Sky charged through life with boundless energy, his laughter ringing across the camp like the sound of his namesake. Standing Bear watched them play near the cooking fire, where Morning Dove prepared the evening meal. She had become like a mother to them, though she had eventually married a warrior named Tall Pine, and now carried a child of her own. The twins still ran to her first when they were hurt or hungry, a bond formed in those crucial early days that had never weakened. Thunder Sky, be gentle with your brother, Standing Bear called as the more boisterous twin tackled Silent River during their game. I am gentle, Father, Thunder Sky protested, helping his brother up with a grin that revealed a missing front tooth, lost 3 days earlier when he'd fallen from a small mesquite tree he'd been climbing despite warnings. Standing Bear smiled, the expression coming more easily now than it had 3 years ago. The twins called him Father, and though they knew nothing of their true origins yet, he sometimes wondered when that day of reckoning would come. For now, they were simply his sons, Apache in all ways but birth. Not everyone in the tribe shared his view. Swift Fox, now married and a rising voice among the warriors, maintained a cold distance from the twins. He never spoke directly to them, referring to them only as the White Children when forced to acknowledge their existence. A small faction of the tribe followed his lead, though most had accepted the boys as their own, won over by their innocent enthusiasm for Apache ways. White Feather emerged from Standing Bear's dwelling, now her own since she had taken responsibility for the twins' daily care. At 20, she remained unmarried, turning down 2 offers from respected warriors. My brothers need me, she had explained to Standing Bear. The spirits sent them to us for a reason, and I am part of that purpose. Father, she said now, her expression troubled. Scouts have reported white men in our hunting grounds again. They carry measuring tools and paper. Standing Bear's jaw tightened. The encroachment had been steadily increasing. Surveyors marking land for the railroad, prospectors seeking minerals, hunters killing buffalo by the hundreds. Each incursion pushed the fragile peace closer to breaking. How many? 6 men, armed but not soldiers. Standing Bear nodded. Tell Running Horse to prepare 4 warriors. We will ride at sunset to meet these trespassers. No weapons unless attacked, but they must be escorted from our territory. Miles away, in a small mining town called Prospect, Martha Sinclair sat in a dingy saloon, her men's clothing dusty from the trail, her face weathered by 3 years of searching. She nursed a glass of warm beer, listening to the conversations around her while keeping the wide brim of her hat pulled low over her eyes. 3 years of wandering the desert territories had transformed Martha from a grieving mother into a hardened survivor. She had learned to track, to hunt, to defend herself. She had taken odd jobs in frontier towns, cook, laundress, even gravedigger once, to finance her continuing search. Her once soft hands were now calloused, her arms sinewy with muscle, her skin bronzed by constant exposure to the sun. And still, she searched. The maternal instinct that had first driven her into the desert had not diminished, but had rather crystallized into a focused determination that bordered on obsession. She no longer cried, no longer spoke to her absent children as she rode, but every night she marked another section of her hand-drawn map, methodically eliminating territories where her boys were not. Heard there was trouble up near Silver Creek last week. A grizzled miner was saying to his companion at the next table. Some Apache run off a survey crew. Railroad men, they was. Martha's attention sharpened, though she gave no outward sign of interest. Damn Indians, his companion muttered. Army needs to run 'em all the way to the reservation where they belong. Ain't that simple, the first man replied. This bunch stays clear of white settlements mostly. Chief's some fella called Standing Bear. Got a reputation for being reasonable long as you respect their hunting grounds. No Indians reasonable, the second man spat, especially not since they took to stealing white babies. Martha's hand froze halfway to her mouth. What's that now? The first miner asked. My cousin's wife's brother worked a silver claim near there a few years back. Said there was talk of twin babies gone missing right around when the drought broke. Some folks said they died, but others claimed the Apache took 'em. Martha set her glass down with deliberate care, fighting to keep her breathing steady. After 3 years of false leads and dead ends, she had learned to temper hope with caution, but something about this felt different. These Apache, she said, pitching her voice low as she'd learned to do when passing as a man. Where exactly do they camp? Both miners turned to look at her, surprised by the interruption. Who's asking? The second man demanded suspiciously. Martha pulled out a folded paper from her breast pocket, a counterfeit surveyor's license she'd had made months ago for situations just like this. Samuel Sinclair, she said, using the name she'd adopted. Railroad companies paying extra for information on hostile tribes in the area. The first miner relaxed slightly. They're up in the Dragoon Mountains mostly, north side, where there's still good water, though I heard tell they've got a summer camp down in the foothills near Eagle Creek. Martha committed the information to memory. Eagle Creek. Finally, a specific location to search. Back at the Apache camp, the twins had been tucked into their sleeping robes as Standing Bear prepared to leave with the warriors. He knelt between his sons, touching their foreheads in a gesture of blessing. Sleep well, he told them. I will return before you wake. Silent River nodded solemnly, but Thunder Sky grabbed Standing Bear's hand. Father, when I am bigger, will I ride with the warriors too? Standing Bear smiled. When you are bigger, yes, but that is many summers away. I will be the best warrior, Thunder Sky declared confidently, even better than Swift Fox. Standing Bear's smile faded slightly. Being a warrior is not only about being the best fighter, my son. It is about protecting our people, about wisdom in knowing when not to fight. Silent River spoke then, his voice soft but clear. Like you, Father. You fight only when you must. Standing Bear touched the boy's cheek, struck by the perception in those young eyes. At only 4 winters old, Silent River sometimes spoke with uncanny wisdom. Yes, like that. Now sleep, both of you. Outside, the warriors waited with the horses. Running Horse had insisted on joining them, though his age made riding uncomfortable. The white men must understand our resolve, he had said when Standing Bear questioned his presence. They respect gray hair, thinking it signifies authority among their kind. As they rode out, White Feather stood with Darkwater at the edge of the camp, watching until they disappeared into the twilight shadows. Grandmother, White Feather said quietly, something is changing. I feel it in the wind, in the earth beneath my feet. The ancient woman nodded, her eyes fixed on the distant mountains now silhouetted against the darkening sky. The circle is drawing closed, she replied cryptically. What began in the desert 3 summers ago will find its completion soon. White Feather glanced back at the dwelling where the twins slept peacefully, unaware of the forces gathering around them like storm clouds on the horizon. Will we lose them? She asked, her voice breaking slightly. Darkwater's gaze remained on the mountains. That depends, she said, on what you mean by lose. And dawn painted the Dragoon Mountains in hues of amber and gold as Standing Bear and his warriors returned to camp. The meeting with the white surveyors had ended without bloodshed, though tension had hung in the air like summer lightning. The white men had agreed to leave Apache hunting grounds for now, but Standing Bear had seen the hunger in their eyes as they studied the land, measuring, assessing, coveting. "They will return," Running Horse said as they dismounted at the camp's edge, "with more men, perhaps with soldiers." Standing Bear nodded, his face grim. "Then we must be prepared. The tribal council should discuss moving our summer camp earlier this year. Eagle Creek may not be safe much longer." As if summoned by the name, a scout named Quick Rabbit approached, his expression troubled. "Chief, while you were gone, our hunters spotted a lone rider near Eagle Creek. A white man, but dressed strangely. He watched our hunting party from the ridge, but disappeared when they approached." Standing Bear frowned. A scout for the surveyors, perhaps. "No," Quick Rabbit shook his head. "This one moved differently, careful, watching, not measuring, and he carried no instruments, only a rifle and a small pack." "A hunter, then," Running Horse suggested. "Maybe," Standing Bear replied, though something about the description nagged at him. "Double the watch tonight. I want to know if this stranger approaches our camp." The twins were already awake when Standing Bear entered his dwelling, Thunder Sky regaling his brother with an elaborate tale about a mountain lion he'd dreamed of. They rushed to him immediately, small arms wrapping around his legs in greeting. "Father, did you fight the white men?" Thunder Sky asked eagerly. "No fighting," Standing Bear replied, lifting the boy into his arms. "Words can be stronger than arrows when used wisely." Silent River studied his father's face. "But you are worried," he observed quietly. Standing Bear sometimes forgot how perceptive his more reserved son could be. "Yes," he admitted, "the world of the white man pushes closer to our own. It brings challenges we must be ready to face." He set Thunder Sky down and reached for a small leather pouch he kept hanging from a center pole of the wickiup. From it, he removed two small carved figures, an eagle for Thunder Sky and a wolf for Silent River, that he had worked on during quiet evenings. "These are for you," he said, placing them in the boy's eager hands, "to remind you of your spirit animals." As the twins examined their treasures, White Feather entered with a basket of fresh berries. "The children should eat," she said, though her eyes asked a different question of Standing Bear. "Later," he told her, answering the unspoken query about the confrontation with the surveyors. "First, I must speak with Swift Fox about strengthening our patrols." Miles away, Martha Sinclair crouched on a rocky outcropping overlooking a small stream that she believed must be Eagle Creek. Her body ached from the hard ride through the night, pushing her horse to reach the location before daybreak. Now, as morning light spilled across the landscape, she studied the terrain through a small brass spyglass. Yesterday's encounter with the Apache hunting party had been too close. She'd barely managed to conceal herself behind a stand of juniper trees when they'd turned to investigate her presence, but the brief glimpse she'd caught of them had made her heart race, especially the sight of a young boy riding behind one of the hunters, a child with copper skin and long black hair who couldn't have been more than 4 or 5 years old. One child, not twins, but where there was one child, there might be others. And something about the boy's profile, visible for just a moment before they disappeared around a bend, had struck her with painful familiarity. Martha lowered the spyglass, fighting back the surge of hope that threatened to overwhelm her hard-earned caution. 3 years of searching had taught her that hope could be more dangerous than despair. Hope could make you careless, and carelessness in Apache territory meant death. She had survived this long by being methodical, patient, observant. She would continue the same way. First, find the main camp. Then observe, plan, wait for the right moment. If her boys were there, if they were alive, she would find a way to reach them. Back at the Apache camp, Thundersky stared at his reflection in a still pool of water near the edge of the village. He held up a strand of his long black hair, then touched his face, tracing the contours of his cheeks and nose with curious fingers. Silent River sat beside him, watching his brother with knowing eyes. "We do not look like the others," Thundersky said finally, voicing the thought that had been growing in his mind for months. Silent River nodded. "Our skin is different in the summer, not as dark. And our eyes," Thundersky added, "they are not shaped the same." They sat in silence for a moment, the implications of these observations hanging between them like an unasked question. "Do you think Father knows?" Thundersky finally whispered. Before Silent River could answer, Swift Fox walked past, leading his horse. He paused, looking down at the twins with thinly veiled disdain. "Of course he knows," Swift Fox said, his voice sharp enough to make both boys flinch. "Everyone knows. You are not Apache. You never will be, no matter how you dress or speak." The twins stared up at him, shocked by the direct confrontation after years of being merely ignored by the warrior. "That is enough, Swift Fox." Whitefeather's voice cut through the tension as she approached, her eyes flashing with anger. "These are Standing Bear's sons and members of our tribe by council decree. Watch your tongue or I will inform our father of your disrespect." Swift Fox sneered. "They should know the truth. The white blood in their veins will call to them eventually. Better they understand their place now." "Their place is here," Whitefeather replied firmly, "with their family, with their people." Swift Fox spat on the ground. "We shall see how long that lasts." He turned to the twins. "Ask your father where he found you. Ask him why your real mother abandoned you." He mounted his horse and rode off, leaving the twins staring after him in confusion and hurt. Whitefeather knelt beside them, pulling them into a fierce embrace. "Do not listen to his poison," she murmured. "Swift Fox is angry about many things. He uses you to express that anger." But Thundersky pulled away, his young face unusually solemn. "Is it true? Are we not Apache?" Whitefeather hesitated, caught between her desire to protect them and her unwillingness to lie. "You are Apache in all the ways that matter," she said finally, "but it is true that you were born to different parents. Father found you when you were very small and brought you to us because you needed a family." "Where is our real mother?" Silent River asked, his quiet voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "Why did she leave us?" Whitefeather's heart ached. "I do not know, little one. Father will explain when he returns from the council. He will tell you the story better than I can." As the sun reached its zenith, Standing Bear emerged from the council meeting, weary from hours of debate over the tribe's next move. Some, led by Swift Fox, advocated for an immediate relocation deeper into the mountains. Others counseled patience, waiting to see if the surveyors would honor their word to stay away. He was walking toward his dwelling when Whitefeather intercepted him, her expression troubled. "Father, Swift Fox has spoken to the twins. He told them they are not Apache." Standing Bear's expression darkened. "Where are they now?" With Morning Dove, she's telling them stories to distract them, but they have questions, many questions. Standing Bear nodded slowly. "It is time they knew. I had hoped to wait until they were older, but..." He sighed heavily. "Bring them to Darkwater's dwelling at sunset. She should be present for this conversation." As Whitefeather hurried away, Running Horse approached, his lined face grave. "The council is divided," he said without preamble. "Swift Fox speaks of war, of driving back the white encroachment with force. Many of the younger warriors listen to him. And the elders? We counsel peace for as long as possible. But we cannot ignore that the white man's hunger for our land grows stronger each season." Running Horse paused. There is something else. The stranger near Eagle Creek has been seen again, closer to our camp. Our scouts say he moves like one tracking game, following signs that most white men would miss. Standing Bear considered this new information. Post warriors at all approaches to the camp. If this stranger continues to advance, I want him intercepted, peacefully if possible. As Running Horse departed, Standing Bear gazed toward the western horizon where the sun had begun its descent. Soon, he would need to tell his sons the truth of their origins, a truth that might change forever how they saw themselves and their place in the tribe. And somewhere out there, a mysterious tracker was circling ever closer to the camp, like a hawk spiraling toward its prey. Standing Bear couldn't shake the feeling that these two developments were somehow connected, threads of the same unfinished tapestry woven by the spirits on the day he first found two tiny bundles beneath a desert saguaro. Sunset cast long shadows across the camp as Standing Bear led the twins to Darkwater's dwelling. The boys walked silently, their usual energy subdued by the weight of unspoken questions. Silent River's small hand gripped his brother's, a gesture of solidarity in the face of truths they sensed would change everything. Darkwater sat by her fire, her ancient fingers working a piece of deerskin with practiced motions. She did not look up as they entered, but nodded slightly, acknowledging their presence. White Feather followed them in, positioning herself near the entrance as if standing guard against the outside world. "Sit, my sons," Standing Bear said, gesturing to the woven mats arranged around the fire. The twins obeyed, their eyes wide and solemn in the flickering light. Standing Bear settled across from them, choosing his words carefully. "You have questions," he began, "about who you are and where you came from." Thunder Sky, normally the first to speak, remained uncharacteristically silent. It was Silent River who answered, his voice quiet but steady. "Swift Fox says we are not Apache, that our real mother abandoned us." Standing Bear's jaw tightened at Swift Fox's cruelty, but he kept his voice level. "Swift Fox speaks with half-truths, sharpened to wound. I will tell you the whole truth, which is both harder and kinder." He drew a deep breath, then began the story of that fateful day, the footprints in sacred ground, the sound of infant cries, two small bundles beneath a saguaro cactus baking in the desert sun. "You were left to die," he said simply, watching their faces. "Not by your mother, I believe, but by others from her village who feared what your birth meant." "Why would they fear us?" Thunder Sky finally spoke, his voice small and confused. Darkwater answered, looking up from her work. "Among some white people, twins are thought to bring bad fortune, drought, disease, death, foolish superstitions born of ignorance. But you saved us," Silent River said, looking at Standing Bear. "You brought us here." Standing Bear nodded. "Yes, I found you and brought you to our people, breaking sacred laws to do so. The council debated your fate, but in the end, they allowed you to stay." "As Apache," White Feather added firmly from her position by the entrance. "As my sons," Standing Bear corrected gently. "The blood in your veins may not be Apache, but the spirit in your hearts, the language on your tongues, the values in your minds. These are of our people." The twins absorbed this in silence. Around them, the fire popped and hissed, sending sparks spiraling upward like ascending prayers. "Where is she now?" Silent River finally asked. "Our first mother." Standing Bear shook his head. "I do not know. Perhaps she died. Perhaps she believed you were lost forever. Or perhaps she searches still," Darkwater murmured, almost to herself. Thunder Sky frowned. "If she is alive, why has she not come for us?" "The desert is vast," Standing Bear replied. "And the white man's world and ours rarely touch peacefully. She may not know where to look, or even that you survived." A heavy silence fell over the wiki-up. Outside, the evening songs of the camp had begun, women calling children to meals, men returning from hunting, the rhythmic pounding of corn being prepared for tomorrow's bread. "Are we still your sons?" Thundersky finally asked, his voice breaking slightly. Standing Bear moved around the fire, kneeling before the twins. He placed one hand on each boy's shoulder, looking directly into their eyes that held uncertainty, fear, but also trust. "You have always been my sons, from the moment I carried you from the desert," he said firmly. "Nothing can change that. Not Swift Fox's words, not the color of your skin, not even the truth of your birth." Tears welled in Thundersky's eyes, but he blinked them back fiercely. Silent River remained composed, though his small shoulders trembled beneath Standing Bear's hand. "You are Apache," Darkwater pronounced from her place by the fire. "The council acknowledged it. The naming ceremony sealed it. The Great Spirit guided you to us for a purpose that is still unfolding." As Standing Bear embraced his sons, Martha Sinclair crouched behind a boulder at the camp's perimeter, watching through her spyglass as figures moved between dwellings in the gathering darkness. She had abandoned her horse 2 miles back, approaching on foot through terrain so rugged it had torn her clothing and left her hands bloody from scrambling over rocks. 3 days of careful stalking had finally led her to the main Apache camp. Now, hidden at its edge, she struggled to control her racing heart as she scanned for any sign of children who might be her sons. Movement near a large wickiup caught her attention. A man emerged, tall, imposing, dressed in Apache garb, but carrying himself with the unmistakable authority of leadership. Behind him followed 2 small figures, children whose heights and builds suggested they might be the right age, but in the fading light, she couldn't make out their features clearly. Martha lowered the spyglass, fighting back a sob. So close, after so many years of searching, yet still uncertain, she needed to get closer to see their faces. But approaching an Apache camp at night was certain death, even for someone who had survived alone in the desert for years. As she debated her next move, a twig snapped behind her. Martha froze, her hand instinctively moving toward the knife at her belt. "Do not move, White One," a voice commanded in accented English, "or my arrow finds your heart." Martha raised her hands slowly, turning her head just enough to see the Apache warrior standing 10 paces behind her, bow drawn and aimed with unwavering precision. "I mean no harm," she said quietly. "I'm looking for something lost." The warrior's expression remained impassive. "You find death instead, trespasser." Back in Darkwater's dwelling, Standing Bear was explaining to the twins how they would need to be strong in the face of those who might question their place in the tribe. "Some, like Swift Fox, will always see you as outsiders," he said. "But remember that actions speak louder than blood. Live with honor, courage, and wisdom, and most will recognize you as true Apache." Suddenly, a commotion erupted outside. Shouting, the pounding of running feet. Whitefeather stepped outside briefly, then rushed back in. "Father," she said urgently, "Quick Rabbit has captured an intruder at the edge of camp, a white man." Standing Bear rose immediately. "Stay here with the children," he instructed Darkwater and Whitefeather. "I will deal with this." As he strode toward the gathering crowd at the camp's perimeter, a strange foreboding gripped him. The mysterious tracker had finally been caught, but why tonight, of all nights? Just as the twins learned of their origin, a white intruder appeared at their doorstep. Standing Bear felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. The circle that Darkwater had spoken of was indeed drawing closed, faster than any of them had anticipated. Quick Rabbit and 2 other warriors led the captive into the center of the camp, where torches had been lit to illuminate the gathering darkness. A crowd formed quickly, voices murmuring in Apache as they assessed the intruder. Standing Bear pushed through, his expression stern as he prepared to confront this latest threat to his people's safety. But when the warriors brought their prisoner forward, Standing Bear stopped abruptly, momentarily confused by what he saw. This was not the white man they had expected, but a woman, small in stature despite her men's clothing, with hair cropped short beneath a wide-brimmed hat and eyes that burned with a fierce, desperate intensity. "She carried this," Quick Rabbit said, handing Standing Bear a spyglass. "She was watching the camp. And this," he added, producing a folded paper with an official-looking seal. Standing Bear examined the items, then addressed the woman in English. "Who are you? Why do you spy on my people?" Martha Sinclair stood as tall as her tired frame allowed. 3 years of searching had prepared her for this moment, yet now that it had arrived, words failed her. Instead, she asked a question of her own, her voice hoarse with emotion. "Do you have them? My sons?" A ripple of murmurs passed through the crowd as those who understood English translated for others. Standing Bear's face remained impassive, but his heart hammered against his ribs. This was no random intruder, no scout for the white surveyors. This was the mother. "I know not of whom you speak," he said carefully, though the lie tasted bitter on his tongue. "Twin boys," Martha pressed, taking a step forward, until Quick Rabbit's firm hand on her shoulder stopped her. "Born 4 summers ago, taken from Silver Creek, left in the desert." Her voice cracked. "My babies." Running Horse stepped forward, his ancient face grave. "Chief, what is this woman saying?" Standing Bear did not answer immediately. His mind raced, weighing truths, consequences, loyalties. "She claims to be the birth mother of Silent River and Thunder Sky," he finally replied in Apache, causing gasps among those nearby. Swift Fox pushed through the crowd, his eyes gleaming with vindication. "I told you this day would come. The white people return for their own, as I warned." "Silence!" Standing Bear commanded, his voice carrying the full weight of his authority. He turned back to Martha, switching again to English. "How do we know you speak truth? Many white women have lost children." Martha's hand trembled as she reached into her shirt, withdrawing a small object wrapped in faded cloth. She unwrapped it carefully, revealing a silver locket on a delicate chain. "Inside," she said, holding it out to Standing Bear, "are locks of their hair, cut the day they were born. And this." She pointed to an engraving on the back of the locket. "M.S. plus J.S. Together in our sons." Standing Bear examined the locket, opening it to find 2 tiny curls of dark infant hair, preserved like precious artifacts. He closed it again, studying the woman's face, the same shape of eyes as Thunder Sky, the same determined chin as Silent River. "Where have you been these 4 years?" he asked, his voice lower now. "Searching," Martha answered simply. "They told me my babies died. But I knew they lived. I've combed every inch of desert between Silver Creek and the border. I've followed every rumor, every whisper." Her voice broke. "Please, are they alive? Are my sons alive?" The plea in her voice touched even the most hardened warriors in the circle. Mothers in the crowd drew their own children closer, imagining the unimaginable, years of searching for a child taken. Standing Bear felt the weight of all eyes upon him. The tribe waited for his decision, his wisdom, but this was beyond wisdom. This was about hearts, the hearts of 2 boys who now called him father, the heart of a woman who had never stopped searching, and his own heart, which had grown around these children like a tree embracing stones in its trunk. Before he could respond, a small voice came from the edge of the circle. "Father, what's happening?" The crowd parted to reveal Silent River and Thunder Sky, who had slipped away from Darkwater's dwelling, drawn by the commotion. White Feather stood behind them, her face anguished at having failed to keep them away. Martha's breath caught in her throat. She swayed slightly, steadying herself against Quick Rabbit's restraining arm. "My boys," she whispered, her voice so faint it could barely be heard. "My beautiful boys." Thunder Sky stared curiously at the strange woman, but Silent River's gaze was more penetrating. He looked from Martha to Standing Bear and back again, his young mind connecting threads of conversation from earlier that evening. "Are you our first mother?" he asked in careful English, his accent thick but his words clear. Martha nodded, tears streaming freely down her face now. "Yes," she managed, "I am your mother, your first mother." Thunder Sky stepped closer, fascinated and confused. "But you left us in the desert, to die." "No!" Martha cried, lurching forward until the warriors restrained her. "Never! They took you from me when I was sick. They said you had died. I would never have abandoned you. I've been searching for you since the day you disappeared." Standing Bear watched the twins' faces as they processed this revelation. Silent River's expression remained thoughtful, absorbing the implications, while Thunder Sky looked to his brother and then to Standing Bear, seeking guidance in this confusing moment. Swift Fox moved to Standing Bear's side, speaking in low Apache. "This changes everything. The white woman has come for her children. Our laws say we must." "Our laws," Standing Bear interrupted firmly, "say nothing about this situation. This is unprecedented." The camp had fallen silent, the only sounds the crackling of torches and Martha's quiet weeping as she gazed at her sons, forbidden by her captors from approaching them. Standing Bear knelt before the twins, placing his hands on their shoulders. "This woman," he said gently, "is indeed your birth mother. She did not abandon you as I believed. She has been searching for you all these years." Thunder Sky's lower lip trembled. "Does this mean we must go with her? Leave our people? Leave you?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Every member of the tribe understood what was at stake, not just the fate of two children, but a precedent that could reshape their relationship with the white world forever. Martha watched the interchange, not understanding the Apache words, but reading the body language clearly enough. The boys looked to this man, this chief, as their father. They spoke his language, wore clothes like his people, carried themselves with the unmistakable bearing of Apache children. They were her sons by birth, yet in every other way they belonged to this tribe. "Please," she said, addressing Standing Bear directly, "I don't want to take them from the only home they remember. I need..." She struggled to articulate what she truly wanted in this moment she had imagined for so long but never fully envisioned. Dark water appeared then, making her way slowly through the crowd with the aid of her walking stick. Despite her age, the assembly parted for her immediately, respect evident in their movements. She approached Martha, studying her with ancient eyes that seemed to see beyond flesh and bone. "This woman has the spirit of a mother wolf," she declared in Apache. "She has crossed mountains and deserts, faced hunger and danger, never abandoning her search. This is a mother worthy of respect." She turned to Standing Bear. "The spirits guided you to save these children. Perhaps they now guide her to find them. The circle seeks completion." Standing Bear nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. He addressed the tribe, his voice carrying across the assembly. "Tonight, we will make no hasty decisions. The woman will be treated as a guest, not a prisoner. Tomorrow, the council will meet to discuss what is best for Silent River and Thunder Sky." He looked at the twins, then at Martha. "For tonight, White Feather will take the boys back to rest. The woman will be given food and shelter in my dwelling, under guard." As White Feather led the reluctant twins away, Martha called after them, "I love you. I've always loved you." Silent River looked back once, his eyes meeting Martha's with an expression of such complexity that it broke her heart anew. Curiosity, confusion, and something like recognition, as if some deeply buried memory had been stirred by her voice. Standing Bear approached Martha as the crowd began to disperse. "I do not know what tomorrow will bring," he said quietly. "But know this, those boys are loved here. They have family, purpose, belonging. Whatever you seek for them, remember that." Martha looked up at him, this man who had raised her sons for 4 years, who had saved them when her own people had condemned them. "They call you father," she said softly. Standing, Bear nodded, the simple acknowledgement more powerful than any defense he could have offered. "Then I thank you," Martha continued, her voice steadying, "for being what I could not, for giving them life a second time." As Quick Rabbit led her towards Standing Bear's dwelling, Martha caught sight of Swift Fox watching from the shadows, his face hard with displeasure. She recognized the look of a man who saw opportunity in chaos, who would use her presence to further his own agenda. Tomorrow would bring its own battles, she knew, but tonight, for the first time in 4 years, she would sleep knowing her sons were alive, were safe, were loved. It was both more and less than she had dared to hope for. Morning arrived with the solemnity that accompanies momentous decisions. The council fire had been lit at dawn, 7 stones arranged in the traditional circle. Standing Bear sat at the eastern point, his face composed despite the turmoil within. Beside him, Running Horse and the elders took their places, back straight, expressions grave. Martha had been brought to sit at the edge of the circle, not as a prisoner, but not yet as a guest with full rights. She wore the same travel-worn men's clothing, though she had washed her face and combed her short hair with borrowed implements. Her eyes constantly scanned the camp, searching for glimpses of her sons. White Feather had kept the twins in Dark Water's dwelling during the early morning preparations, but now she led them to a place near the council circle. They had been bathed and dressed in their finest clothes, their hair freshly braided in the Apache style. They sat cross-legged, solemn and watchful, understanding that their fate hung in the balance. "The council of the people gathers to decide a matter without precedent," Running Horse began, his voice carrying across the assembled tribe. "The white woman claims to be the birth mother of Silent River and Thunder Sky. She did not abandon them as we believed, but has searched for them since they were taken." Swift Fox stood, his warriors gathered behind him. "The law is clear," he declared. "They are of white blood. Their mother has come for them. They must return to their own kind." Murmurs passed through the crowd, some in agreement, others in protest. "The law is not clear," Standing Bear countered, rising to his feet. "These children were given Apache names in proper ceremony. They have been raised in our ways. Their spirits are Apache, whatever blood flows in their veins." White Feather stepped forward. "I have cared for these boys since they were infants. I have taught them our stories, our values, our language. They are my brothers. They belong with us." Martha watched the proceedings, understanding little of the Apache words, but recognizing the emotional current that ran beneath them. When Running Horse gestured for her to speak, she rose shakily to her feet. "I don't speak your language," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "But I understand what it means to love a child. I have searched for my sons for 4 years, never losing hope, never stopping." Quick Rabbit translated her words into Apache as she continued. "I see that they are healthy, strong, and loved. I see that they have a father, a sister, a tribe that has raised them well." Martha paused, choking back emotion. "I came here ready to fight, to take back what was stolen from me. But now I see it isn't that simple." The crowd grew still, surprised by her words. "These boys don't know me. They don't speak my language or know my ways. To take them from everything familiar would be another kind of theft." Tears tracked down her weathered cheeks. "But they are still my sons, my flesh and blood. How can I walk away from them again?" As Quick Rabbit translated her final words, Silent River suddenly stood and approached Martha. He stopped before her, studying her face with eyes that seemed too wise for his young years. "You have the same eyes as Thunder Sky," he said in careful English. "When you smile, there are lines here." He touched the corner of his own eye. Martha nodded, unable to speak through her tears. Thunder Sky joined his brother, more hesitant but equally curious. "Did you really look for us all this time?" "Every day," Martha whispered. "I never stopped." The twins exchanged a look that spoke volumes, the silent communication of brothers who shared thoughts as naturally as breath. Standing Bear watched the interaction with a heart both heavy and somehow lightened. Dark Water had been right. The circle was closing, finding its completion in ways none of them could have predicted. He approached Martha and the twins, conscious of every eye upon them. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "there is wisdom neither the white world nor the Apache world has yet found. Perhaps a child can have two families, two homes, two traditions, and be stronger for it." Swift Fox scoffed. "Impossible. The white world and ours cannot mix without bloodshed. History has shown this time and again." "History is not destiny," Standing Bear replied. "It is a path we have walked, not the path we must continue to follow." He turned to the council elders. "I propose something new. The woman Martha will stay with our tribe through the next full moon. She will learn our ways, and the boys will learn hers. Then we will decide what path serves the children best." Martha's eyes widened in surprise. "You would allow me to stay among your people? As the mother of Silent River and Thunder Sky?" "Yes." Standing Bear's gaze was direct, uncompromising. "But you must respect our ways during this time, and understand that the final decision must consider what is best for the boys, not only what you or I desire." Running Horse stroked his chin thoughtfully. "This is unprecedented, but so is this entire situation." He looked to the other elders, who nodded one by one, though some did so reluctantly. "The council agrees to Standing Bear's proposal," Running Horse announced. "The woman will stay until the next full moon. Then we will decide." Swift Fox's face darkened with anger. "You risk everything for these white children," he spat. "When the cavalry comes looking for this woman, they will not listen to talk of compromise." "If soldiers come," Standing Bear replied calmly, "I will speak with them as I speak with you now, with truth and reason." As the council dispersed, Martha knelt before her sons, wanting to embrace them but restraining herself, sensing they needed time. May I know what they call you?" she asked softly. "I am Silent River," the thoughtful twin replied. "And this is my brother, Thunder Sky." Martha smiled through her tears. "Those are strong names, good names." She hesitated. "I named you James and John, after your father and his father. But your Apache names suit you well." Thunder Sky tilted his head curiously. "Our father's name was James." Martha nodded. "James Sinclair. He was a good man. He died before you were born, but he would have loved you very much." Standing Bear approached, placing a hand on each boy's shoulder. "Your mother will stay in Whitefeather's dwelling. You may visit her whenever you wish, and she may come to see you. There need not be walls between you." The boys looked up at him with identical expressions of relief. Whatever happened, they would not lose the only father they had ever known, at least not today. As summer stretched into fall, the uncommon arrangement yielded unexpected fruits. Martha learned basic Apache phrases, helped the women with daily tasks, and gradually earned a measure of respect from the tribe. Whitefeather, initially wary, found in Martha a kindred spirit, another woman who loved the twins fiercely and would sacrifice anything for them. The boys blossomed under the dual attention, proudly teaching Martha Apache words while absorbing the English she taught them. They listened, wide-eyed, to stories of their birth father and the town where they were born. In the evenings, they would return to Standing Bear's dwelling, sharing the day's adventures with equal enthusiasm. One evening, as the promised full moon approached, Martha sat with Standing Bear outside his dwelling. The twins had fallen asleep inside, exhausted from a day spent learning to track deer under Quick Rabbit's tutelage. "They are remarkable children," Martha said softly. "You have raised them well." Standing Bear nodded, accepting the compliment with quiet dignity. "They carry the best of both worlds within them now." Martha studied his profile in the firelight, this man who had been both savior and rival, enemy and ally. "The council meets in 3 days," she said. "I still don't know what to ask for." "What is right?" "Oh, nor do I," Standing Bear admitted. "To separate them from you would deny their birth. To take them from us would deny the lives they have built here." They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of the coming decision heavy between them. "Perhaps," Martha said finally, "we should ask the boys what they want." Standing Bear looked at her in surprise. "They are children. In our tradition, they would not be asked to make such a choice." "Nor in mine," Martha agreed. "But these are not ordinary children, and this is not an ordinary situation." The next morning, they gathered the twins by the stream where they had first begun to question their identity. Standing Bear explained that the time had come to decide where they would live, and that both he and their mother wanted to know their thoughts. Silent River and Thunder Sky exchanged their characteristic look, a silent communication born of sharing life since before birth. "We want to stay with the people," Silent River said finally. "This is our home." Martha's heart constricted painfully, though she had half expected this answer. But Thunder Sky continued, "We also want to know our first mother, to learn her ways, her stories." "Both," Silent River clarified. "We want both." Standing Bear and Martha looked at each other over the twins' heads, a moment of perfect understanding passing between them. 3 days later, before the assembled council, Standing Bear proposed what many considered impossible. Silent River and Thunder Sky would remain with the tribe, continuing their Apache upbringing. But Martha would establish a small homestead near the tribe's winter camp, where the boys would spend part of each season learning the ways of their birth culture. "This woman has proven herself a true mother," Standing Bear told the council. "Not by birth alone, but by her courage, her persistence, her willingness to put her children's needs before her own desires. She has earned the right to know her sons." Swift Fox objected vehemently, warning of the dangers of allowing a white settler so close to their territory. But Dark Water spoke in support of the arrangement, her ancient authority swaying many who might have opposed it. "These children are bridges between worlds," she declared. "In a time of growing conflict, such bridges may be our best hope for survival." The council deliberated through the night. By morning, they had reached a decision. The arrangement would be allowed, cautiously, conditionally, but allowed. Martha's joy was tempered by practical concerns. "The nearest town is hostile to Indians. How will this work?" "There is a trading post 3 days' ride south," Standing Bear explained, "run by a mixed-blood Cherokee and his Mexican wife. They deal fairly with both Apache and white settlers. You could establish yourself near there." And so a new chapter began. Martha built a small cabin near the trading post, learning from its owners how to bridge the gap between worlds. The twins spent most of their time with the tribe, but stayed with their birth mother for 1 moon each season, absorbing the language and customs of their white heritage while maintaining their Apache identity. It was not always easy. Tensions flared periodically, particularly when Swift Fox became sub-chief of the warriors and increased patrols near Martha's homestead. White settlers viewed her with suspicion for her friendly relations with the Apache. The arrangement existed in a fragile balance, threatened by the larger conflicts swirling around them. But for Silent River and Thunder Sky, it was a childhood unlike any other, rich in traditions, languages, perspectives. They grew into young men who could move between worlds with unique ease, respected in both for different reasons. Years later, when government agents arrived to force the tribe onto a reservation, it was the twins, now tall, confident young men of 16, who stepped forward as translators and negotiators. Their dual heritage, once seen as a curse, became an unexpected blessing as they helped craft an agreement that preserved more tribal autonomy than most Apache groups managed to retain. Standing Bear, his hair now streaked with gray, watched with quiet pride as the sons of his heart used their unique position to protect their people. Martha, operating a successful trading post of her own by then, stood nearby, her once short hair now grown long and braided in a style that blended frontier practicality with Apache influence. "They are the future," Darkwater had prophesied before her passing 2 winters earlier. Not Apache, not white, but something new. Something stronger. As twilight descended over the desert, Standing Bear and Martha stood side by side, watching their sons lead their people toward an uncertain future with courage and wisdom born of both their worlds. "Thank you," Martha said softly, "for finding them that day." Standing Bear nodded, his gaze still on the young men who had transformed from helpless infants to leaders before his eyes. "The spirits guided me to them," he replied, "just as they guided you, never to stop searching." In the deepening blue of the desert sky, the first star appeared, bright, solitary, enduring, like the love that had transcended blood, culture, and tradition to forge a new kind of family from the ashes of abandonment and the courage of compassion.